shady stuff. Let's just put it that way. Some shady stuff and try and bust out some surprising victories here. So we'll see what he can do.
All right, well, on the bottom right-hand side, to finally start us off today, sorry for the slight delay, but we're very excited to bring you the first playoff action of this season's ESL SC2 Masters. We start off in the bottom right of Babylon with the red Protoss player, GunGFuBanDa.
And up here at the top left-hand side of the map, we have our blue Zerg player. He is known by none other than Serral.
I always find it so interesting watching how Serral approaches series like this, where he is the favorite. We know he's the favorite, right? And he knows he's the favorite too. Like, how safe is he going to be? Like, how cautious, but also, like, is he going to get a bit aggressive at times just to keep GunGFuBanDa on the edge and really never let him get comfortable in this series? Because I feel like Serral's always had some of the most interesting ways of playing out, like, best ofs. Even against players he's very favored on. You know, it's not always the same. You're not always just seeing the same thing on repeat. So, yeah, always excited to see that when you come into a Serral match, even against someone like GunGFuBanDa.
No, absolutely. And we even see that there is going to be a pull first over here from Serral, which is not only going to give him a little bit of safety against any kind of super duper early pressures, something that GunGFuBanDa could have done, because I think I've seen GunGFuBanDa not be afraid to do a little cannon rush or something cheeky like that over there, but it's also just going to allow him to put a little bit of pressure on GunGfu himself. We've definitely seen Serral, exactly to your point, do things like flood out a couple of early Zerglings, depower the first pylon by a Protoss player that doesn't go for an early scout or something, and ends up just losing the game just like that, or even a drone pull or something. I don't think it's going to be drone pull or anything along those lines this game, but it does just make sure that the Protoss player is really respecting that Serral isn't just going to play standard. They can't just be as greedy as they want to.
Well, that's exactly it, right? Just keeping the keeping the Protoss player honest, right? And just, again, stopping them from getting into that comfort zone is generally a pretty good place to be. So, yeah, a couple Lings show up early, and that's a probe that's going to die. So that's already nice. You forced a Cybercore placement here that doesn't want to be there. So that's just going to slow you down a little bit, too. And just a couple of Lings are already finding value, even when you maybe don't expect just a couple of Lings to be finding value.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Cybercore placement is also an interesting one. I guess it has more hit points instead of throwing down the gateway.
Yeah.
It's cost the same amount, but is going to end up having to cancel that regardless. Throws down a Twilight Council back over in his main base, so GunGFuBanDa is not going to be looking to go for one of those target openings. We are going to keep an eye out to see whether or not he wants to invest in maybe some Resident Glaives or something along those lines.
Yeah, I would imagine so too. Works on each gas is a pretty good indicator to Glaives over like a Dark Shrine and kind of like some kind of DT into Archon drop or so. So imagine this is going to be Glaives. The fun part of Glaives nowadays, at the very least, is the fact there's so many different ways to play Glaives. So you don't know, okay, we're just going to like blink all in? Okay, now he starts Glaives. I was like, okay, mate, that's a little bit wild. But yes, there's so many different ways to play Glaives. You can play like 6-gate Glaives, you can play 3 gates. You can play 4-gate. This is no Robo right now. We're going to go 4 gates, no Robo. That is kind of funky. Because this is going to be a very late Prism if you build a Robo now. So it almost feels like no Prism and then maybe some kind of very aggressive follow. Okay, now we're going to go Robo. Okay, it's just lining up all kind of weird.
Yeah, I guess with this, you get your first round of Adepts to warp in back at home. They make their journey across the map, and then I'm thinking like maybe the idea is that you use the Adepts to kind of like pull you into the front, and then the Prism just kind of goes straight to the main base or something and warps in offensively there as you kind of drawn things around. That's at least like my best guess of how this could still time out and be somewhat okay, but we'll have to wait and see. Serral obviously has already scouted the Twilight Council very, very easily. There's not a whole lot of units that could have actually prevented that Overlord from making its way into the main. So he should have a decent idea of what's possible. But like you were trying to point out earlier, he may not know exactly how many gateways have committed to this just yet.
He did see the extra production in the main, including the Robo timing, I believe. So
Ooh.
He has a lot of information, really. And yeah, I mean, obviously, I guess that tells you a lot. Now he's going to see the Nexus too, so he's very sure of what this is. And obviously, the Nexus coming down is something you don't usually see. And you can just see that GunGFu is being extremely passive, right? An observer. Glaives is done. We're just not doing anything. So Serral's like, okay, cool. I've made a few units, sure. But you're not doing anything to me, so let me get my lair, let me get drone production back. He's going to check across the map with these roaches, see if there's an option to do anything, but I'd be kind of surprised if he could. It's definitely being a weird way to open. It's very rare you see passive adepts, and that's exactly what this is. I mean, they're sitting back in. Yes, at any point maybe they could launch across the map, but if they try to now, there's already units enough to meet them. It is not really that threatening, and as they are even shading backwards, that tells you that they are really not sure about moving out at all. And yeah, Serral is just going to get to macro up, and GunGFu is going to be leaning heavily on this Robo Bay as his next bit of tech. That bit of tech needs to go a long way.
Yeah, it's just so weird because, like you were saying, it's pretty rare that we see the adepts being this passive. And part of the reason for that is that these adepts do really, really well when they're in enemy territory, because then they can force themselves around in different locations, and the Zerg player has to follow. The Zerg player is chasing them down, and the adepts are constantly looking for drones. If you're on the defensive, adepts don't really take the best trades against, say, lots of roaches and stuff. They want to be doing things like this, where they can try and avoid the roaches, dance around, move around and stuff. If Serral had gone for the attack, I almost wonder if Serral had just been holding down the roach key and making even more roaches before. I don't actually know if GunGFuBanDa could have defended.
I don't think so, right? I mean, he just has adepts, no other damage output. The Robo Bay and hence disruptors were too far away. I think he would have been in a lot of trouble. Serral continues to play this out just very safely from here on out. He's not over droning. You know, he doesn't need to. He's very comfortable as long as this stays even, and he's doing exactly that. He's keeping it even, opening up some rocks. Getting extra overlords, his melee upgrade, and Bane and Roach speed finish. That's when he can maybe start to be more aggressive more successfully. And it does seem like that is currently the plan for him. I mean, GunGFu will achieve his goal in this game. He is going to safely get up to 3 bases of army. You know, he's going to be able to have some tech in the form of disruptors. Blink and +1 will be out. I'm just worried that you've done all of this while kind of letting Serral do what he wants. Like, Serral's had to make a few units along the way. It's not just being completely plain clear sailing. But it's not like he's made major investments. He's always been on uncomfortable work accounts. Never been the pros player out macroing on the work account or anything, right? So, and especially now, like I say, as these speed upgrades finish, I do get a bit worried that GunGFu might just fall to this first attack. Serral gets slightly supply blocked as he loses an overlord, but as he spreads himself out, he is readying to move on in, and we'll see if these disruptors can put in the work. There is a good amount of stalkers. They do have blink. Let's see what we can do, Fear Dragon.
Yeah, Serral maybe just dancing around, threatening the idea that if GunGFuBanDa moves a little bit too far forward, then Serral can come in from multiple different angles there. But yeah, that prism is the big signal that GunGFuBanDa is finally looking to get aggressive here. And it's just going to be so tough because Serral is so ready for it. There's a lot of creep spread that he has to work his way through. Serral's going to have that +1 missile or melee already done. And he is just going to have so many opportunities to just find some massive concave on this attack, on this army, which really is relying on the disruptors. The disruptors have to get so much done for this.
That's such a good start for Serral, right? Just catches a few stalkers and so on. Just a couple of things already getting going, and now we have ourselves just continue to position Hive on the way up. So he's progressing into a stage where he can safely deal with disruptors. You get those Vipers out, a couple of abducts. They just give you that get out of jail free card. You abduct the disruptor away, and boom, the shot is no more. We'll see if Serral wants to attack in majorly before Hive is done. It looks kind of like he will at least give it a go. Just because I think more than anything else, even just rolling Banelings towards your opponent's mineral line is very rarely a bad idea in this matchup, especially once +2 is done. Obviously, that's not quite yet, but maybe we could give it a go. It looks like Serral for the moment will back off. His Hive is about to be finished, so you might want to free up a bit of supply so you can afford to build a couple of Vipers, because right now, he's completely stacked up. It's going to be Bane setting up on the right side, but GunGFu sees this with good observant positioning, and he will be able to clean that up.
Oh, Prism in the main base of Serral right now. It's so low on hit points, though, and he just has it idling. This is the reason why Serral was starting to pull back some of his army, because he saw that Prism, but the Prism didn't end up doing anything. It just ended up dying for absolutely nothing. That's so unfortunate, but these disruptor shots are pretty phenomenal. Serral definitely freeing up some supply there, although not quite in the way that he would have wanted. Now going to try and move up a ramp into some force fields. This could have gotten a little bit dicey, but I just don't think that the force fields are there. And there are so many Banelings, Wardy.
There are. The disruptors do not have a shot available right now. How? It feels like at this point we've been building disruptors for such a long time now. How do we have so few? Like, don't get me wrong, 4 is not a bad number. It just feels like so little considering we've been setting up for disruptors since like minute 5. And that's a problem because obviously now Serral just moves in. There's not enough splash to keep him back. Even with a great first shot, all it takes is one shot to miss and boom, Serral's just in there on top of this. 4th base cancelled, 17 probes killed. And Serral finds himself in a fantastic spot. Maxed out, 30 more Banelings coming in, just pretty much ready to go and do it all over again.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's not even that disruptors have died. There's no disruptors that have died this game. It really has just been the priority to make additional gateway units, to warp in additional stalkers and everything. And it's again, it's not even making Colossus or transitioning to High Templar, or adding on Archons or any of these other units. It's really just been pure gateway, and I don't know that pure gateway is really going to be able to do the job over here unless he has some of the most amazing disruptor hits with just those 4 disruptors. Does honestly get some pretty gosh darn good disruptor hits, but he knows it's not going to be enough. GG gets called, and Serral takes the first game.
Yeah, very. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just very convincing from Serral, because it just didn't even seem like, even when GunGFu got a great disruptor shot, it kind of felt like, so what? You know, like, so I was like, oh, that sucked. Let me just move in and kill 20 workers and half the army, rebuild, and then win the game still. Honestly, if I have to be brutally honest, it's kind of what I expect to see from Serral versus GunGFuBanDa. GunGFu maybe doing things a little bit weird, his own kind of style, whatever, you know, feels good for him. And Serral just kind of saying, yeah, I'm Serral, man. Like, you kind of got to do something against me. And yeah, I understand that attacking into Serral's terrifying because he's usually so well prepared. He knows what's going on. But this time, like, you just invested into... What did Glaives do? It threatened the idea of Glaives. It forced some roaches out of Serral, but he didn't even have to cut below on workers. I just didn't feel like this build really had what it took to really contest Serral at all, because Serral didn't look phased by any of it. It was weird. It was different. Definitely not what we normally see. And Serral was just like, cool. I'm just going to macro up casually. I'm not going to go too hard just in case you do suddenly have like 10 gates and you're attacking me. But yeah, he just slowly built himself up to a good position. Didn't hesitate to put the tech down in terms of the hive. And there you go. GG's. Serral just, like I say, a very convincing first game to start us off here for your Dragon.
Yeah, it's really tough because I don't exactly have a better plan to offer GunGFuBanDa when you're facing off against Serral. That's kind of what makes Serral so scary. But I will say, like, when I think back to the odd series that sometimes happen where Serral somehow loses to random, you know, Protoss player in group stages or something at a big premier event, a lot of the time it is something kind of silly looking, like here's just a lot of adepts and you're like, oh, Serral's usually really on top of this, but just so happen to be slightly out of position for like the first, you know, shade of adepts or something like that. So I don't hate the idea of going for that Resident Glaive adepts, but you know, you're not going to get to accomplish anything unless you actually decide to commit to it. Either that, or if the idea was there to just force out a reaction from Serral and do a really fast transition, even commit less into making fewer adepts, like really just dig in on the, I'm actually probably going to die if you just attack me, but I don't think you will. I'll get a super fast transition, get up more disruptors like you were talking about. I'd love to see some kind of doubling down to a degree from GunGFuBanDa in this next game.
On the top left-hand side, let's see what he's got up his sleeves for Grezvan, the red Protoss, GunGFuBanDa.
And on the other side of the map, we have our blue Zerg player. He is none other than Serral, sitting up 1-0.
Yeah, it was just convincing, wasn't it? Like, yeah, I don't really know what else to add, right? It's one of those games where, you know, I mean, put it this way, it's gonna sound maybe a bit brutal, but I'm pressing the button to take highlight moments, right? And there was like the one disruptor shot, and other than that, you know, it was that, and like the final fight was like, well, that kind of was the highlights. Like, nothing happened, and that's not even like a hate on like GunGFu or whatever, like, because not even Serral did anything impressive. It wasn't like Serral had an impressive defense or anything either, right? It was just very simply a game where nothing happened for like the first 7 or 8 minutes, pretty much. We had a big disruptor shot, and then Serral swarmed him and killed him. Like, that was the game, what it came down to. So, kind of really shows the difference in level and the ability to set up. And like I say, we'll see what Serral does here. Hatch, gas, and pool this time, by the way. Probe does not show up in time to block the hatchery off the natural expansion. So we'll see what GunGFu wants to do. Maybe a Stargate-based opener this time around to switch away from that Twilight Council could be the route, especially with letting this hatchery go up on the natural, because if the hatchery goes on the natural, it's much more difficult to find damage with adepts early that can have that knock-on effect, so maybe just something a bit more standard here.
Yeah, and I think that is one kind of blessing about PvZ, is there are a decent variety of ways that you can try and open things up, whether you want to go for the Stargate into, you know, just the Blink Stalker style, if you want to go for like a doubling down on kind of Stargate play and really try and meme Sky Toss your way to victory or something against a player like Serral. If you want to go for more of those Resonating Glaive Adept things, if you want to go for a Dark Templar opening or something after some, you know, not Resonating Glaive Adepts, but just some Adepts, there's a lot of different ways you can play this game out. There's a lot of different openings the Protoss player can try out. So we'll see what GunGFuBanDa's come up with during the couple of days he had to prepare for this match. What he feels like is going to be the best option. And, you know, although those options usually do start with getting out an Adept, get out a Stalker to try and deny the Overlord, and then take your pick.
Yep. No, absolutely. It's, yeah, just kind of makes sense, right? Like, to do something like that. We're going to see Twilight again. I don't hate it, because there's obviously so many things you can do for Twilight. But I really hope we don't try and do the same thing again. I feel like GunGFu's got to have something different planned. So let's see what we are going to do. Is GunGFu is going to have a quick little pause arena. How's your day going, Fear Dragon?
It's, you know, it's going okay. I'm still excited for some of the matches and stuff coming up with this so far. We'll have to wait and see. I'm waiting for GunGFuBanDa to just be like, you know, I'm gonna do the same thing. You know how you sometimes hear about players who plan out a best of 5 or a best of 3 or something, and they say, well, game 1, I'm gonna do a build that looks a lot like what I did in the previous game. But then the next game they do something slightly different. Imagine GunGFuBanDa does the exact same build, but just actually commits with the Adepts. It's like, the mind game, it looks so identical because it is the same build. I just actually tacked in. I wouldn't mind that.
I mean, that's true. I just wonder how threatening the Adepts would be even if they attack, because Serral was ready, right? Yeah. So unless Serral is then going to be like, okay, I see you doing the same thing, I'm just not going to respect it, and I just drone. Like, that's why I kind of question it, I suppose. Which, this time you see the Robo way faster, so this is much more indicative of actually being aggressive. And getting the Prism out straight away and really trying to hit that more aggressive timing with the Adept. So it does feel like GunGFu is going to try and up the ante here going into round 2. Let's see if that's successful for him.
Yep. This game so far, Serral does not have that same kind of Overlord position, which immediately just scouts out the main base location, sees the Twilight Council, sees the gateways and everything, which is part of the reason why he was able to be so well prepared in that game number 1. But Serral still has a Roach Warren on the way. He's still going to have the ability to make some Roaches before the Adepts actually end up hitting. So it's not like Serral doesn't have any opportunities to react to this. In fact, his first Zergling just poke forward, sees the kind of timing for the third base, sees the Adepts that are still at home. So he's going to be picking up on some small signals here, and it looks like that's actually enough for him to start flooding out a decent number of Zerglings to deal with the initial Adepts.
Okay, this was a different Robo timing, right? I'm not just crazy. He definitely went Robo.
Yeah, it definitely is a different Robo.
And now he's just going to Observer first anyways. It's just... I mean, it's the same thing, just the Robo was built at a different time. And, I mean, we are going across the map with the Adepts. I don't think he shaded forward one time last time around, so I do like this. This is definitely a bit more aggressive, but we don't have a Prism. We don't have a reinforcement route for this. Serral seems to be aware. He is bypassing the Roaches until now. He's like, this is kind of serious. But Serral's also not seen a Prism coming across the map, so I don't know how many Roaches he might feel like he needs. He's going to add a few more. Blair's already on the way up. You can see that Serral's not respecting this as like 4-gate glaives. It's because of that third Nexus. He knows if the third Nexus is down, you can't possibly have afforded all the other things that make this scary, and hence he can afford to build up a bit himself. And that's exactly what he's done, and he was completely right to do so. He did build a few Roaches, but much later on than he would have done so if it was initially more aggressive Adepts. And this is all just the scouting information from the third base telling Serral, hey, look, I can be this safe and get set up, and boom, there you have it.
Yeah, I think the one thing I do want to mention is just that Serral did make a fair number of Zerglings in place of the Roaches that he didn't make. So his work account is I mean, compared to last game, I would say it does feel like Serral invested a bit more in the defense compared to last game. And I do wonder, he still is able to keep all those units alive and everything, so there can still find some potential use over here, even maybe gonna try and bait out some force fields or just keep an eye out on his opponent's army composition. But maybe this is a game that is gonna go a little bit better compared to last game for GunGFuBanDa, at least.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's definitely a... I mean, it feels as though, getting up to gates, the Robo... I don't mind all the parts of it coming together. I feel like at least he put a bit more pressure on. He maybe forced the roach where Serral was thinking of maybe skipping them. So, yeah, let's see what happens though. I mean, because it feels as though it still could just be the fact that once Serral macros up and just gets powered up. I mean, you still have this army here, which is like adepts. And, you know, those are just 7 adepts that are just not useful because later in this game, there's some banelings that are going to roll into those adepts and they're not going to think twice about knocking them over. And then those adepts have just been adepts that have just not led into anything else. Yeah, they force some units, but they just don't trade well. In fact, it would be good just to shade them across the map and try and trade for drones because they're going to be that useless in a fight. So, yeah, I'm not convinced, man. I'm kind of intrigued to see where we go, I guess.
Nah, I'm definitely with you in a lot of ways on that, especially when you look at things like the disruptor count is not exactly super high either just yet. The first disruptor is only just now kind of starting to pop on out. As Serral's already hit his 72 worker count, he's already just on flat out units mode for his kind of game plan over here as he's getting up his additional upgrades like the melee upgrade, baneling speed and everything. And it's not going to be too far off that he's going to be close to max out. And I feel like it's going to be in some ways similar to the first game where we look at the disruptor count and we look at Serral's maxed out army and say, well, that's just not enough disruptors with the army composition you have. You're so reliant on big hits. I'm actually a little afraid, Wardy, we're going to see like another massive disruptor hit and go, so what?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's just like there's 2 disruptors, you know, and don't get me wrong, that's not a bad count for this stage of the game. There's oftentimes games where there's no disruptors at this point, but that's because so much else is happening. There's been no aggression, no pressure from the Protoss play that there might usually have been. His Ling's going to run in. We're actually going to warp in even more depths here to defend these Lings, which don't get me wrong, it's nice to defend Ling run-bys like this, but in the larger army fights, those adepts are still going to be so much more dead weight than any other unit would be, and that's exactly what Serral's going for. Like, he's not pulling the trigger until he's close to being maxed out. He's knocking down the rocks. He's making GunGFuBanDa move around. He's making him make bad warp-ins like those extra adepts.
Yeah, it's going to be problematic for him. More banelings finish on up. Serral looks like he's finally going to commit in with around 36 of these banelings. Waits for some of those force fields to expire. Knocks them down. Disruptor shot number 1. Connects on a few units. The second disruptor shot. Oh my god. Almost friendly fires. Good dodge out of there for GunGFuBanDa. But again, so what, Wardy? So what?
Yeah, GG's. I mean, cool blink back from your own disruptor shot. That honestly felt like the best part of the game. He was like, oh my god, I'm about to kill my own stalkers. Dodge. He's like, yeah, you see that? I've got the fastest blinks in the West, baby. But it's like, it doesn't really count if you're the one shooting at yourself. Yeah, you know, honestly, sometimes you just have to be honest, right? I know I kind of said it, but it's Serral. He's the favorite to win this tournament alongside Reyna and Clem and Max Pax, you know, maybe a Gabe. You know, Serral's up there. And GunGFuBanDa, in my eyes, it's cool that he made playoffs, especially because he didn't look as good as he'd been in the group stages in like previous years of DreamHack or regionals, right? So, yeah, in that regard, I think we've just got to say, like, you know, GunGfu has like the toughest draw. I'm pretty sure GunGfu plays Serral because he's probably the lowest seed at versus one of the highest seeds, right? So, it absolutely just comes down to that. And you know, we're just seeing that difference right here. You know, if GunGfu gives us something to get excited about, we will. But until that point, this is just... we're just kind of knocking along, man. We're just keeping on going.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. It just has been a bit rough. And it's an unfortunate thing when you face off against someone who is basically, like you said, one of the tournament favorites to win the entire event and everything. And you do look a little bit worse. I think versus another kind of caliber of Zerg player, GunGFuBanDa is maybe getting a few extra W's in here. Maybe some of these build orders and stuff can work out a little bit better, but it's just tough because someone like Serral just doesn't give you opportunities. He doesn't give you the chance to actually look good a lot of the time.
That's very true. Let's see what in the top right-hand side our red Protoss player has left to give us his last chance in this tournament. It's GunGFuBanDa.
Down here in the bottom left-hand side of the map, the blue Zerg player from Basilisk, 1 game away from moving on to the next round. He is Serral. This is the scariest part too, Wardy, in my mind, because this is that point where Serral just kind of says, yeah, you know, I did like a pool first and everything in that first game, but like didn't really need to use it a ton. But now I can kind of do anything I want. I'm up 2-0 and I've kind of dominated in the later stages of the game. I could, like, this is the time where sometimes Serral does just say, yeah, I have places to go, you know, golf tournaments to go win and stuff. I'm just gonna actually cheese you out or something like that. That's what I think is really scary to me. Even if he doesn't end up cheesing, it's just something that I feel like is still in the back of my mind that you have to respect a little bit.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. As I will say, this time GunGFu got there to block the 16 hatch, and then Serral had to run the drone over to the 3rd and was a little bit late to get there. So, hey, you know, that's neat. That's something. You know, my question to you is, obviously we've seen 2 games in a row where the difference was essentially the robo facility timing. That was the difference in the games, right? And they both pretty much did the same thing. Does GunGFu just do this? Like, surely we're not going to see the same thing again. This has to be something a little bit different, right?
I have to imagine so. I don't think I was with you in the sense that getting the first observer out from that robo did not really accomplish a lot. I will admit, GunGFuBanDa killed a creep tumor in that second game. So the observer did something there, but it really did not get anything worthwhile that I feel like a prism couldn't have just basically gotten more damage done with.
Even if you don't want to commit with the adepts, right? I understand a prism's very mineral heavy, and maybe that affects the 3rd time and so on. But I feel like even if you just make a prism, even if you have no intention of warping in aggressively more adepts or anything, the threat a prism provides is already so much better for you than, yeah, okay, the observer got a creep tumor. He probably would have got the creep tumor if he built the observer second, right? So I just feel as though like anything could have been better. We're going to see a very different game here, as we are going to get the cyber core blocked down. This is usually more of a PvP thing, but it will buy a few more moments here against the against the Zerg. So, and now the Adept's going to show up to try and get the drone kill as well. Actually shades into the Ling, surrounded for a moment. This Adept is not going to have a good time. It is pretty much going to die, right? Going to get chased and killed.
Bit unfortunate to lose the Adept, but I guess the bright side is it actually gave the Cyber Core some time to get even more hit points. So as much as it does suck to lose that Adept in a lot of ways, it actually ends up delaying the natural for, I want to say, like an extra 15, 20 seconds almost.
No, the natural definitely gets delayed, so there is a win from GunGFu. What is not good is losing a second Adept, though, because if he had any inclination of getting a faster 3rd base up, that's now delayed. And if that was a faster 3rd base, you know, with an Oracle on the map, that's also not an Oracle on the map. Like, there's going to be some cutback here for losing these 2 Adepts, and that's going to be the cost. So, yeah, that, and also Serral doesn't have to worry about 2 Adepts, which is also very nice because 2 Adepts can sneak in and kill a few drones here or a few drones there. So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say that Serral's pretty okay with this. Obviously, Oracle is out, and we have it already on the bottom side of the map. We'll see if GunGFu can get some damage done. He's going to fly in via the natural.
Yeah. I'm totally with you. I think Serral's going to be okay, especially after having sniped off the Adepts. But the Oracle's going to dive into the main base where there isn't exactly a lot, but wastes a shot on the spawning pool, so misses the opportunity to kill more than one drone. That's all he's been able to get. And now the Oracle's so low on hit points that going to the 3rd base is not actually really that viable anymore. And it could have been, because there's no spores over there. Second Oracle gets so low without accomplishing anything either. This is just such a rough game for GunGFu now.
This is just honestly, I mean,
He's gonna
straight
get supply
up.
blocked.
Yeah, I mean, just every part of this, right, is just rough. Like, I mean, both the Oracles are low HP. They've killed a worker. You know what I mean? It's just, there's just nothing there.
Yeah.
There's nothing to this. Serral just going to get a couple spores up. Roachron coming down. We'll see exactly how he wants to play this out. He could go let already if he wants to. Doesn't seem like that's the case just yet. As the Roachron finishes, he has quite a lot of money banked up. I do feel like Serral is planning to make a bunch of units and to commit to some extent, which may not be a bad idea, because the Oracles are low, so if you do bring Queens across the map, the Oracles aren't going to last as long as they usually would, because you can only heal the shields. You know, like, there's just so many issues. This Adept gets surrounded, and, well, I mean, does this force the Oracles to use their energy? If it does, then that's going to be really bad when it comes to the Oracles defending as well, because that's energy being used. Serral kind of given GunGFu something by stopping running around with those Lings. Actually gave the Oracles more of a chance to deal damage, but I mean, if the Oracles stay active, that's still less damage going out when these Roaches arrive, so I kind of feel like GunGFu is maybe a few moments away from dying here.
I'm definitely with you. 3rd base is going to be looking extremely vulnerable as the Queens make their march across the map, even without creep to actually transfuse. Just being able to deny the Oracles from doing non-stop damage, and the shield battery's still not finished up over here. I think the Queens will just be arriving right before that shield battery finishes.
Yep, here we go. Is obviously we've got Ling's just going to try and go to the front. The Queens just want to go on top of the Oracles first. Oracle's going to die. That was the healthy Oracle too, by the way, for your Dragon. So if there was an Oracle that was going to live, it was kind of meant to be that one. Now the Oracles keep on dropping, and this really is just, I mean, GG, good luck. That is your series. Serral wastes no